Chapter 115 to 116. The third Mizukage could only despair as the world slowed around him, and despite his Herculean attempts to move fast enough. He could only watch as the staff of the third Hokage neared his lovers, Himeno's head, without her even knowing, as she faced the redhead Konoha ninja, panting and exhausted, too distracted by her own fight to watch her surroundings.
No.
He mentally screamed with wide eyes, unable to do anything to save Himeno as the third Hokage's staff impacted her head from the behind. Himeno's head caved in from the force, sending her body crashing to the ground, folding like a paper, and the third Mizukage couldn't help but freeze in his tracks, mentally repeating no, as he refused to believe what just happened. Himeno, the love of his life, was dead. The third Mizukage couldn't help but sucked the cold air that permeated the surroundings, balling his hands into fists so hard that blood started dropping onto the ground. He was still shaken from the sight of Himeno's collapsed and deformed body, offhandedly noting the redhead ninja was horrifiedly staring at the scene in a manner quite similar to him. The world stilled as regret swelled in the Mizukage's heart, and his gaze slowly turned to a furious glare full of deep-seated hatred boring into the grimly satisfied mug of the third Hokage, who spat a fireball onto Himeno's body, burning it to cinders, to add an insult to an injury. The war between Konoha and Kiri was over. Both men knew it, no matter how much one of them wanted to admit it. The Hokage didn't use the momentary distraction of the Mizukage, and in order to kill him, he just watched and waited, hoping the death of the woman the Mizukage clearly loved would be impactful enough for a full retreat, but not enough to make a man who was a Kage, and knew what that entailed, to decide going out with one last bang in an act of revenge. The Mizukage wanted nothing more than to tear the old shriveled monkey to pieces and stick the freaking bow staff up his ass, but he was slowly losing men. Konoha might have been outnumbered, but they clearly brought only the best of their fighters to confront Kiri forces. This expedition was a failure, and he knew it. If he continued, it would only endanger Kiri further, and he couldn't have that. Reluctantly, the Mizukage threw a kunai with a special seal tag attached towards the sky, where it burst into a very bright red sphere, lingering amongst the cloud as it declared the order to retreat for the Kiri forces. With one last tear-stricken glare, the Mizukage ran towards the shore, cursing and blaming himself for Himeno's death. The battle of the northern shores ended, while the armies of Konoha and Kiri clashed on the northern shores of the Land of Fire. Rei had other plans. "It's creepy how empty the village is," Mei mumbled as her eyes were tightly closed and her senses were dutifully monitoring the people in the village, hidden in the mist through a harmless mist-like dense cloud of white steam she created. Not unlike her boiling one, Mei was completely capable of sensing everyone inside of it. Well, most of the ninjas are either on the Kumo front as a distraction or a part of the invasion to the Land of Fire. That's why now is the best time to do this. Rei shrugged as his eyes flickered across a seal while he was in the process of altering it in such a way that it would not attack him and nobody would notice his intrusion. Rei and Mei were currently in front of the most guarded building in the village, the Kiri ANBU headquarters, more specifically its treasury. Now that the village was almost empty, Rei finally decided to check the place out, since there was almost no danger of being discovered as long as he knocked out the guards and used Mei to create a small disturbance with her steam. Not to mention Mei was an incredible sensor with it. The ANBU guards that were supposed to guard the place were numbering 20 and all laid on the ground after Rei sneak attacked them with his chakra strings and zapped them unconscious with lighting chakra through them. Rei was quite glad though. Normally there would be at least 100 ANBU patrolling around the place, and every few minutes, a new ANBU, one who was not part of the 100, would walk around it just in case. It was really the best guarded place in the village, as even the Kage didn't have such protection. To get inside without making the entire village alarmed was almost impossible during normal times, but now that more than 60% of the ninja population was away, the 100 ANBU guardsmen were reduced to a mere 20, and instead of every few minutes, it took at least 3 hours for an ANBU not part of the guardsmen to walk by. It was the best opportunity for Rei to discreetly get inside. And done. Rei smirked as the seal glowed a bit before subsiding to normalcy. He turned to Mei and nodded at her. "Wait here and warn me if anybody is getting close. It would be infinitely more comfortable if we are not caught trying to steal the most precious things Kirigakure owns." Seeing Mei nod, he entered the room containing the most precious things in the whole Land of Water. 30 minutes passed with Rei browsing through the things stored there, his face marred with an enormous frown as his eyes twitched. "Trash, useless, bad, crap, unusable dash. No, wait, that could work. But I have no interest in an explosive rubber ducky the size of a horse. Seriously, who made that thing?" Rei muttered as his lips morphed into a profound scowl. "Why the heck is most of these things so useless? Scrolls of S-ranked jutsu? Scrolls with sealing knowledge? Summoning scrolls? Poisonous deodorant? All of these I have no need for." Rei was frustrated. Sure, the scrolls were stashed to his storage dimension, but he didn't really need them. They were mostly for his future endeavor rather than for him or his girls. All in all, he wasn't really happy with what he found in the best treasury of Kirigakure. Rei almost gave up the further he went in the room, not finding anything immediately useful when he suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked at an unassuming small brown jar that looked as normal as possible. It had no special odor, no special appearance, no special chakra signature. Safe to say, even a high-ranking ninja would find it to be just a normal jar. Not a seal master though. Rei's lips widened into a joyful smile as he finally found something worthwhile. Something that was a big part of the reason why he still stayed in the Kiri. For years, I was looking for you. His eyes hungrily lingered on the jar with an excited glint. And even though you probably won't wake up due to the seals on the jar. Nice to meet you, Saiken. The team Downpour was recalled to Kirigakure not even 2 weeks after the Battle of the Northern Shores ended. Them being so far away from the village was also the perfect alibi for the ongoing investigation on who broke into the Kirigakure's treasury. But didn't take anything at all. Honestly, Rei was quite amused at the disbelieving and uncomprehending looks of the Kirigakure's higher-ups whenever he spied on them discussing it. He naturally left copies of the scrolls in the treasury, so all seemed as if somebody was there but didn't take anything. It was driving them sparse, and Rei enjoyed every second of it. Sadly, he found only the jar with the sleeping Six-Tails in it and had no idea where Three-Tails was, but he didn't care much about that. Six-Tailed Demon was much harder to come by anyway, as Rei knew a few events in which the Three-Tails was supposed to participate. He would still have time to act on it later and get some chakra from the beast, but the Six-Tails was different. Rei didn't even remember the arc with Utakata as he was totally bored by it and didn't much care about it. The biggest topics in the village were mainly 2 things. Mei's ascension to the first SS rank ninja ever, and the failure to invade the Land of Fire alongside the loss of the Kiri forces in the Battle of Northern Shores. One was incredibly positive while the other, not so much. It was more than obvious which one was the preferred topic in the village, and Mei was simply going sparse by how casually she is being greeted by people who would glare and scorn her just a few weeks ago. She really wasn't happy about it, and this time it was her who was glaring at everyone who even tried to open their mouth in order to start a casual conversation with her. As for the less popular topic, Kirigakure lost 10% of its ninjas in that battle. The order to retreat from the Kumo front was already sent. Officially, Kirigakure was still a part of the war, while unofficially, the village lost too much in Konoha to continue fighting. The higher-ups basically decided to hole up and focus on surviving the war rather than participating. 2 of the 4 members of the 7 swordsmen fell, and only thanks to the other 2 surviving members did Kirigakure manage to keep their swords. Himino, the heiress of the Yuki clan, died. At least 20 more A-rank shinobi of Kiri also met their end. Kirigakure was simply too exhausted to continue to waste its forces for the war. There was no profit in it anymore. When Rei heard about the losses, he even felt a pang of guilt for the deceased, since it was because of him that Konoha managed to ambush Kiri forces, but then he remembered one crucial thing. The commander was the 3rd Mizukage. He was supposed to be a genius at tactics, and he made such a grave oversight as not expecting a searingly warm and pointy welcome when he arrived near the shores. At that point, Rei decided to not bother. Frankly, he expected better from the man. Speaking of the Mizukage, he became a broken husk of his former glory. The village had to be mostly run by the council as he grieved for Himino, and that state lasted for 3 weeks until the Mizukage finally decided to take his responsibilities seriously again, and since then, he didn't leave his office at all. Just lucky he had an adjacent bathroom there. The guy didn't even have the time to chat with the team Downpour about their recent mission since he was dealing with the fuck-up he caused. Many whispers of removing him and installing the 4th Mizukage started to be heard in the wind, and Rei could only shake his head. Even Conan believed the Kiri was going to become worse for wear. "Are we finally leaving?" Conan asked as she sat on the couch with Rei's head on her lap while she lovingly caressed his hair. "I am quite fed up with this village. Living normally is nice and all, but when you got paper everywhere in order to eavesdrop and know the darker secrets. Yeah, hey Sigurd. I just want a last meeting with Mizukage. Call it my vanity, but I want to see his new mental state after he lost the woman he loved. After that, we will use the war to elevate our status, perhaps." He threw her a mischievous look, which she promptly returned. "Eh? You want to get an SS rank rating? I doubt it would be so hard." Conan hummed. "Not only that, we still have a year and a half until the end of this war. We gotta improve the dimension. Get stronger. Get better, get more infamous." Rei trailed off but then snorted. "I personally don't want to join any other hidden village. They are too constricting and expect their ninjas to serve them to their deaths without question." Rei shook his head. "I have had enough of that in Kirigakure, and I must admit we were lucky the Mizukage wanted to accommodate us, otherwise it would be far worse and much more uncomfortable." "Right?" Conan gained a faraway look as she reminisced about the last years. Suddenly she snapped out of it and tilted her head. "What about Tsunade? She should be stuck in Konoha until the war ends." Rei nodded at her with a slight appreciative smile. "As she should be. That way nobody can associate her with us. It's not like she can't just teleport to the dimension and train. Furthermore, I am sure she is quite content with having so many free test subjects." Poor patients of Konoha Hospital. Ray snorted mockingly, earning himself a reproachful but amused slap on his shoulder by Conan. Both settled and Ray just enjoyed Conan's finger coursing through his hair for a few moments before he sighed. I noticed I have been neglecting the creation of new seals since the war started. He idly commented. Yes, I have become a bit lazy too. It's time to get back into the form. Conan simply agreed, and if May or Ringo heard her, they would quickly pale and run for their lives. If the training they were put through was to be considered lazy, they didn't want to see what real training was like. By the way, Tsunade is getting quite good with Senjutsu, becoming a real berserker with her instant healing and brute strength. Ah? Conan playfully tilted her head. Well, you would know. After all, you did spend a few days with her in the dimension. So, did she get any better? You know, in bed, she sultrily asked, and Ray barked out a laugh. Yeah, she is a delight. Before Conan could react, she found herself in a Princess Carry as Ray marched towards their bedroom. In fact, I will just show you. Both laughed at that, lust apparent in their eyes. Somehow, puberty hit them hard, and with the high amount of nature energy in their system. Let's just say Conan and Tsunade were glad for anti-pregnancy seals. Yet another reason why Ray didn't want to add May until she was 15 years old and was willing after knowing all the facts. That night became May's favorite as she spied through a barely visible mist on Conan and Ray having fun while she was left to her own lonesome devices. Who said training in espionage was boring and unexciting.